7 slides. Going over the 7 different parts of the egg that we're going to be talking about today. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do so. Alright, let's focus in now, stop those side conversations, and we're going to get into parts of egg anatomy, so just follow along with those notes, fill in pretty simple, just like normal. Alright, the shell, this is kind of pretty familiar, should be the first part of the egg that we all think of. As soon as we get a chicken egg, duck egg, even a turkey, ostrich egg, they're all going to have pretty similar to the same type of anatomy. But in this example, we're kind of talking about normal chicken eggs. The egg's shell has more than 7,000 tiny pores, and this allows oxygen to pass into the egg and carbon dioxide to escape from the egg. That's basically kind of the way that egg will breathe while it's developing. Allows oxygen to enter and carbon dioxide to exit through those 7,000 tiny pores. So if you ever actually pick up an egg in the store and feel it, you can kind of feel the texture is a little bit bumpy. It's not completely smooth, and you can look kind of closely and you can almost see those little divots and pores in those eggs. Moving on, next part we have is the membrane. So if you've ever cracked open an egg from the store, like you're making an omelet, you're making some scrambled eggs for breakfast, you'll sometimes notice that shell will separate from this little thin membrane. There's an inner and outer membrane found between the eggshell and the egg white. The egg white is that kind of clear substance surrounding the yolk. And this keeps bacteria from entering the egg and helps to slow evaporation of moisture from the egg. So make sure the moisture stays inside, and it helps prevent bacteria from entering through the pores in the eggshell that could harm the embryo if it is a fertilized egg. Seconds for those who are still writing. Alright, next you have the air cell. The air cell is located between the inner membrane and outer membrane at the large end of the egg. So if you look at an egg, you kind of notice that one side is a little bit more tapered and pointed, and the other side is a little bit more larger and rounded. Can't really tell this picture. This is kind of where the pointed end, the base of the egg is a little bit larger and rounded. That is typically the larger rounded end is where your air cell of the egg is going to be located. This holds oxygen for the chick to breathe as it's developing. So once again, if you carefully crack an egg at home and dump out the contents and kind of look at that half of the shell, you'll see a little air pocket similar to in this image. That's going to be the air cell of the egg where that embryo gets oxygen from. the air cell, we have the albumin. The albumin is another word for the egg whites. So that's this like clearish tinted like liquid that surrounds the yolk. So your egg whites. You can separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. Some people prefer to just eat the egg whites and not eat the egg yolks, and vice versa. This cushions the egg yolk floating within it, and is the main source of protein and water for that developing embryo. So just like when we eat eggs, it's a good source of protein for us. It's a good source of protein for that developing chick if the egg is fertilized. And then we have the yolk. The yolk provides food for the embryo. It's made up of fats, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. So this is where the majority of those fats and nutrients are going to be supplied to that embryo as it develops. Up next we have what's called the chalaza, I believe is how you pronounce it. Chalaza are little tiny cords on the two sides of the yolk, and they help keep the yolk floating in the center of the albumin, or the center of the egg whites. That way the egg yolk doesn't kind of go all the way off to one side of the egg, get stuck to the side of the shell, it remains in the center. So it's kind of faint in this image, but if you've ever had eggs and you've been like put a few of them in a bowl and you try to scramble them, sometimes I find these little calazas, they kind of are hard to get scrambled into like the actual egg. I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed that, but it's those like two little white specks on the side of the yolk. And they're these little cords, and they just help keep it balanced within that gelatinous albumin. Then we got one more, I believe. All right, and finally, we have the germinal disc. This can also sometimes be referred to as the germ spot on the egg. The germinal disc is this little white spot right on the yolk, and that is where the female's genetic material is found. So when fertilized, this is also the spot where that embryo will start to develop. But little tiny white speck. 7 different parts of the egg, or anything that has to do with eggs or poultry maybe that we've learned about thus far. Alright, so now that we've kind of got a brief definition of these 7 main parts of the egg, in a moment we're going to be receiving one of these worksheets, and we are going to be cutting this out and creating our very own parts of the egg foldable that looks like this once it's all done. You'll be able to close it, open it up, and it will have labeled all the different parts of the egg that we've just discussed. But first, I have a quick video to show kind of how that process works, how to create this egg foldable, and then I'll briefly explain one more time how to do that. It's actually the only video I can find about this. So you get materials, piece of paper, scissors in the back. You're going to cut out the foldable, and I believe it'll explain you're cutting it out entirely. So it's only going to be one solid piece. You're not cutting out individual pieces. Once it's all cut out, it should still be all connected. Yeah, just cut the perimeter, you should have one large piece. And then they zigzag layer on top of each other. Time. I have some color pencils up here. You're welcome to color in your yolk. And then you'll write your egg foldable in front, and you'll label the numbers according to the numbered list of each part that is on the back of that foldable. So, taking a look at this real quick, looking at number 1, what do we think number 1 right here is representing? What part of the egg? The shell, very good. And then number 2 is going to be our what? The shell membrane. Number 3, can we get any guesses? Air cell, very good, because it's down there at that rounded bottom part of the egg. Then to number 4, we have any guesses? Albumin, or what's that also known as? The egg whites. Number 5, that's kind of, it reaches down this way, and then it's also part of this section here. Yeah, chalaza. It has a CH, but it's pronounced like a K, just so you know. Very good, those are chalazas. Finally, that big yellow disc in the center. The yolk. And then finally, that tiny little spot, number 7.
Genetic cell.
Yeah, the germ spot is what is listed on here, or the germination disc, I believe, is also how it's mentioned on your notes. Very good. So once you've created this whole foldable, it should look like this, with all those numbers labeled. Alright, can I get somebody to hit the lights back on for me, please? No, we're not.
No, not yet.
Shh. Let's not talk about this yet. This is different. I'll leave this up so we kind of know what the label is supposed to look like. Okay. So, I'll go ahead and pass out these papers. Again, remember, are we cutting this into pieces or no? No, it should be one large piece when we cut it out, correct? You'll notice that on the large section in the middle, that is going to be the numbers corresponding with the spot on the egg that you're labeling. So it gives you number 1 is supposed to be the shell. Number 2 is supposed to be the shell membrane, etc., etc. Is there any questions so far on how we think this is supposed to work? Okay, let me pass these out and I'll demonstrate one more time kind of how it all folds together. So so you guys get a better visual, and then we can get started. Alright. So again, eyes up here real quick. I'll wait till everybody's eyes are up here so we can see how this is supposed to get folded, how it's supposed to look. Okay, so the best way I found to do this is you'll cut it out and the words are going to be facing you, right? The words are what? Facing us?
Yeah.
So then we're going to face the words down on the table. So we want the words to be facing away from us when we create the foldable, because at the end we want this key with the numbers corresponding with the parts of the egg to be on the back side of that foldable. So we place it down, and then you're able to kind of zigzag fold all the pieces up. So we go from the egg shell to the egg white to the glazes, and then ultimately the yolk and the germ disc, and then you're able to close it up and write egg foldable and your name on the front.
Cool.
Okay? If you get confused once you cut it out, just raise your hand, I'll come over, help you fold it in the correct manner. Make sense? Okay, once you have completed it and written your name on it, I want you to bring it up to me in the front, and I'll add it into the grade book so that you can just take this home with you and use it as a study tool. Understood? So what are we doing once we're done? Showing me, right? And I'll enter it into the grade book. Okay, any questions? Make sure to write your name on it. I have colored pencils once again. If you finish and you would like to color your yolk, go ahead.
Do you have to label parts?
Yes, so, good question, thank you. I want you to label the parts similar to how she labeled them in this video. So you have, number 1 is the shell, number 2 is the shell membrane. So all you gotta worry about doing is just writing the number in the corresponding spot of that egg part. Does that make sense? Okay. If there's no more questions, you guys know where to grab scissors in the back. Make sure you do not grab the red scissors. You can use the orange or the black scissors. Again, raise your hand if you have questions. Go ahead and get started. And make sure to write your name and bring your finger to that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I will. Damn, you were about to stab her. Like,
Orange scissors.
Not the red scissors.
Samro, there's no more,
Then you guys do share. Here's kind of your checklist to remember the things you have to have done before you bring it up to your team to enter in the grade book.
type in that little